Today we're speaking about a portion that we've read together this morning, Tisa, and it is such a full portion. It's the volume that it speaks about. I think this is a topic that one can speak about for a very long time. And so what I've done is I've looked at one concept out of this portion, and hopefully we can look at where Israel was in the wilderness. And at this time, this is the time of the golden calf incident. This is the time that aspects of the Tabernacle was made known to Israel. It's such a big thing. So it's a choice. It really speaks to a choice in our lives. And I think, as I say, this is a quote from John Piper, and it says, People don't really enjoy salt. How many of you eat salt on its own? Take a finger in the salt pot and just eat a little bit of salt. How many of us? Not many. I don't think I do it either. But the fact of the matter is, food without salt doesn't taste well. It doesn't go. So the point is, if we are the salt of the earth and we give flavor to the food, then the focus is not on ourselves, but it is on other people. It's make to whatever words, actions, things that we live out, things that we present to other people to make that palatable. And this is why it's words of endurance, words that's enduring the words of the Father. And I think this is our challenge. Because if we're only salty, salty is not a palatable thing. If we are presenting only salt, then it becomes a problem. All right, so it drains the water, it drains the life. So salt is good, but not on its own. It must be part of the ingredients that we use to flavor whatever we say. So Tisa is from Exodus 30 to 34, 35. It's a very long portion, as we experienced this morning while reading it. It is it's a very voluminous thing, and I think it starts out with a census that the Father is commanding Moses to take up in the nation. And it's really the half shekel situation. It is presenting a half shekel for what purpose? Why did Israel bring a half shekel to the tabernacle? For what reason? What do you think? Any ideas? It says it is for atonement. It says that you will make atonement for yourselves. So why a half? A shekel is really, today it's a coin in Israel, but in the day it was a measure of silver. It is a weight that presents a certain value. So it says bring half the weight. Why half the weight? The answer in what we've read, so that the rich won't boast in what they have and the poor won't not have the ability to bring the half shekel. It is something everybody can bring, but I think the idea is if we represent in our relationship with our Father, if we bring half, where is the other half? The other half resides in our Father. Remember Yeshua in the fish? What was brought out of the fish? Well, that they caught a half shekel. So I think it's important for us to think about this and see that if you are in a relationship, as Israel was in a covenantal relationship at the time, that we are a half of the relationship. That's why we should bring that what we owe. So, and then we see the realities of the tabernacle that's described in this portion today. It is the bronze laver and the anointing oil, the incense, and then the guys that are appointed and made, given the ability and their anointing to fulfill and to create and to make this beautiful sanctuary that our Father dwelt in. So. And then it's 31:13 speaks about the Sabbath as a sign between our Father and the nation. As if we uphold this Sabbath, it is a sign to ourselves and a sign to other people that we have a covenantal, that we've got a relationship. So, and that's about the highlight of the story. Apart from Moses receiving the tablets, of course, think about the tablets that Moses has received. The story goes that it was emerald tablets engraved see-through. It was luminous. And the Father wrote on these tablets with his finger, with his Spirit. Remember, even the Egyptians said, this is by the finger of Elohim. So it was written by His Spirit. And it was given into Moses' custody. And as he went down the mountain, thinking that there might be some sort of a threat to the camp, he asked Joshua, is it war? Joshua says, it doesn't sound like war to me. And as they get closer, he says, this is the sound of dancing and rejoicing. And when he saw the golden calf, then he broke the tablets because the covenantal relationship suffered. So it's one of the lowlights really in Israel's history in the wilderness, because this is a time where Israel lost focus on what the Father was doing in their lives, who He was, what happened. Just remember, 40 days ago, the Father spoke on the mountain, and the fire and the clouds were on the mountain, and He spoke the words over them. And so Moses was going onto the mountain for 40 days, and after 40 days there's a golden calf. It's amazing if you think about this. They could still see the presence of the Father on the mountain, yet they lost focus. And in their why would they lose focus? This is a question to me. Why would this have happened? What do you think? What is the reason for them losing focus? Were they in familiar territory where they used to live and established and whatnot? No, they were camping in a place of thorns, because that is what Sinai means. It's a place of aridness and thorns. So it was an uncomfortable place. And they were probably pressure because they just had a battle with Amalek before, remember? So they were in uncomfortable, out of their comfort zones. What happens to people if they're out of their comfort zones? They quickly look for alternatives and ways to find reassurance and comfort and protection. So, and I think think about our day, by the way. I don't think everybody is quite in the comfort zone we used to be. People are shaken a little bit. And they long back for the good old days. Pre-Exodus. Not pre-COVID, that's something else. What's that, Andres? Yes, they long for the meat of Egypt. That's what they long for. So we can easily fall into that trap. Easier than what we think. So I think if we examine our own lives and think of what is the familiar ways that we so easily turn to, you know, if we are in a place of little bit threat, what are those places that we go back to? And this is more or less my story today. So we see after the golden calf a whole intercession period of Moses saying to the Father, please let your anger subside and forgive this nation we brought out of Egypt. For what reason? For what reason did Moses say, Father, please don't kill everybody? For your name's sake. Because the Egyptians would say, He took them out of Egypt by His great and mighty wonders, but He couldn't keep them in the wilderness. He couldn't deal with them. And His name would be tainted. So everything that Israel went through was for the glory and the goodness of our Father. But we do see that in this process that Israel suffered, because there was a plague that came through and punishments. What were the plagues and punishments in these days just after the golden calf? What happened to them? Can you remember? Did people die? Remember Moses stood at the gate of the camp. I wonder where that is. But anyways, the gate of the camp, and he said, who is for Adonai? Join me. And the house of Levi, his brothers, took up arms, everybody a sword to his thigh. And the people that were guilty of trespass at the golden calf were slain. 3,000 of them. And I think this is the first example of the cup of trembling, really. The cup that's given to the bride that fell. Remember, just a couple of portions from here, we'll read of a bride that went into an adulterous relationship with someone else, and the husband brings her before the high priest, and the high priest asks her questions. You remember that story? So I think this is the first occurrence of that. Take the dust of the temple, mix it with water, and she drinks it, and what happens is there's things happening in her body that's a physical example of her trespassing. So what did Moses do? He took the golden calf, he ground it down to to powder, and he threw it into the water and said, "Drink." And then 3,000 died. This is the first example of what we see later on. So I think for me, and the focus in this story is, if we are building the tabernacle, Oholiab and Bezalel were anointed to do that. Everybody contributed, and they brought, in the last portion, they brought to overflow for the building of a tabernacle. Where does that lead to? It leads to the most holy place, to the ark of His presence, if that's where we are going. All right? But in Israel's experience at the moment, where does it lead to? The gold and the silver and every goodness that our Father has given them led to the golden calf. This is our decisions. We can, in His presence, make decisions that will either lead us to the golden calf or will lead us to the ark of His presence. Our choice. So it's a difficult. It's the one that's going to the golden calf is just living out our normal human self. There's no real effort that we need to put into it to reach that point. It's just our normal human characters, our personality. Remember, we spoke a few weeks ago about self-love, about selfish love. Egev, remember? It is, if I do anything for my own purpose and my own sake, where will I end? We live in the values that we learn as children to be selfish. And if we don't grow out of that and take up the strength of the Father and lay down our own strength, we will end up with a golden calf. But if we lay down our own love, our own characters, our own selfish needs, the things that we trust in and walk in, and take up the strength of Messiah, that's others focused, that's focused on the kingdom, we will end in the ark of His presence. So, our choice. So, as we live life, we've got certain expectations. And I think everything that we do, our whole day is filled with living in a sort of an expectation. Rian is busy with building, and did you see all of the developments that's taking place here? So we say thank you to Rian, that's putting in a huge effort. So, but if he takes out a measuring tape and look at anything, why does he do it? Why do you measure anything? Why do you plan and think and measure anything that you're busy with? It's to be successful. Do you agree? You're working on a project, and as you are making progress, there's a certain expectation in your life. Fit for purpose, yes. And so it works in relationships as well. If I come to you and I say anything to you, good morning, how are you doing? What do I expect? Likewise, I expect interest and conversation. And these are good things. That's how we were wired, and it's all good things. But the problem is that expectations can grow and become something that gets out of hand if it's not taken and presented before the Father at all times. So, and I think that's our call, is to walk in the light of what the Father takes us and where He takes us, and that our expectations does not outgrow where the Father wants to lead us. You know, so I was wondering, what did Israel expect as a result of the tabernacle in the camp? What do you think? The last time we heard from the conversation with our Father, He was on the mountain, and the mountain quaked and rumbled, and lightning and smoke. And so He spoke the words, and they said, "Whoa, Moses, please go and hear from the Father and tell us, we will listen." And so that's more or less their experience with the Father's presence. What's happening now with His presence coming from the mountain and sitting in the middle of their camp? What is their expectation? What do you think? Batsilo? Yeah, I think it's awe and fear and trembling that they're thinking. At the moment, He's at a safe distance. Remember, there's rocks around the mountain. If we don't approach safe, what happens if He comes into our camp and lives next to my tent? You know? What else? What's benefits of His presence in our camp? Experience His love and His goodness, and look at what He has done for us in Egypt and brought us out with a strong right hand, and Just remember what happened to Amalek when Moses' hands were lifted up and Joshua was leading the nation. We conquered our enemies and we had victory. And look at the water flowing from the rock. Manna every morning. Maybe it's a good thing for him to be in our camp. What is the expectation? So there are goodness that's coming from His presence. And sometimes we focus on the goodness. We think that He's a protector. He's our protector. He's our provider. He is the one that heals us. He is the one that leads us. And the center of that relationship easily revolves around our needs and how He services our needs. And that becomes a problem. Then we are back into selfish love. So in our relationship with our Father, for what purpose do we have a relationship? Why did they want a relationship with our Father? And why do we want a relationship with our Father? I know this is a question that we just take for granted. But check yourself. Think about this. Why did you get into a salvation relationship with our Father? Why did we come into the kingdom? For what purpose and reason? What was the first thing that we wanted to do? The eternal fire policy. That's what it was. You skip the fire, you go to heaven. That's what it was. For whose purpose and whose benefit is that? Probably more for your own than for the Father's. So I think if we must ask that question, why did they desire a relationship with Him? And why do we desire a relationship with Him? That's a question that you can think about at night. There's no real answer now, here. But that's something that we should think, because the thoughts and intentions of the heart is what the Father is about. So, the next question was, you remember with Nadav and Abihu and with Korach in the future, the position of the high priest was sought after. It was a popular position. It was something that people desired. But why? What was the reason? Why did they desire us? Why was this role to be desired? What do you think? You come into the presence of the Father, but remember there's a little bit of a risk there. Because if there's any sin, anything in your life, before he goes into Yom Kippur, into the presence of the Father, he's going through almost a week of intensive preparation and making sure everything is sorted out. And you must be careful, because if you come with your sinful nature into the presence of the Father, you'll be burnt. Nadav and Abihu had a little bit of an experience with that. So I think these questions, what would be the reason that Korach wanted to have the high priest position? Was it because he felt that Aaron had built a golden calf and he led them away from the goodness and the mercy and the kindness of the Father, and you wanted to do that? Was that the reason? Or did he feel that it belongs to him because he's a fellow Levite? I think it was more for his own purposes than anything else, and that's why the Father judged him in the process. So if you look at today's story, and we look at the construction of the tabernacle, incidentally, there are 7 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I thought that was quite nice. There are 7 steps, and there are steps that we take to become set apart. There are things that the Father requires for us to live a life of holiness. Because remember in Peter he says, be holy as I am holy, because no one will see the kingdom without holiness. Okay, so the tabernacle is a picture for us on how we live this life of being set apart. It's a picture for us on how to be holy, to live a life of holiness. And I think for us it is well worth it to study and to look at the values and the things that are presented in the tabernacle, because in so doing we can rid ourselves of the darkness and the confusion and everything that belongs outside of the tabernacle. If you look at everything that's presented within, we can audit our own lives and see here are the list of things that doesn't belong in there, and then bring them before the Father, confess, repent, and then we can enter into the tabernacle. You agree? Is it easy? Where is the tabernacle today? over here. So what about the thoughts and intentions, all those ugly things that doesn't belong in the tabernacle? Where are they now? In here. And that's a problem. So, there is a way for us to get into the tabernacle though. And the tabernacle presence in our lives has a starting point for you and I. There's a starting point. And it doesn't start in the tabernacle, incidentally. You know what the biggest problem for Israel, the Levitical priests in Israel today is in planning, thinking, trying to establish the new temple? What is one of the biggest challenges that they face at the moment? Because remember, all the plans are there. The clothes are made. The ornaments are being made. The priests are going through training, intense training to function as Levitical priests in this day for a number of years now. So they are ready. So in establishing a temple, if they can get a place to build it, what stops them from entering into that place? No. The red heifer. Yes, of course. There is the first step for you and I is the red heifer. If we don't cleanse ourselves of the death that is within us, we can't enter into the tabernacle. Because the ashes mixed with water of the red heifer is there to rid us of the symbolic death that is within us. And we must first encounter the red heifer before we even approach the tabernacle. That's the first point. Who's the red heifer in our lives? What does the red heifer symbolize? It is a pointing towards who Yeshua was. Because remember the red heifer, it is an innocent animal that's got no spot or blemish, nothing, perfect, that are burnt with outside the camp to ashes. And that's what happened in Messiah's life. He was crucified outside of the camp, not inside of the camp as an offering in the tabernacle. He was outside of the camp that he suffered. And these ashes, the evidence of his death, is what brings us into a relationship with our Father. And his resurrection, of course, that gives us hope that once we die, we will be resurrected with the Father and to go into his presence. But the death of Messiah, he suffered on our behalf. We know that. So that's the first step. It's a new beginning for us to enter into the tabernacle experience with our Father. And I think this is one of the misunderstandings that we can get from that is enables us to go to heaven. Isn't that great? You know, if we identify with Messiah, we believe that he existed, that he died for us, and he was resurrected, and he sat at the right hand of the throne of Elohim. Wonderful, we will go to heaven. But that's not the purpose. The purpose is not going to heaven. The purpose is to open up a way for us to live in his presence here, so that the kingdom will come here. That is our purpose. That is what it's all about. So if we enter into the tabernacle, that's just a picture. I don't think it was a photo of the original. So there are things that's important, and just two things I would like to highlight. Do you see the outside gate here? Do you see the gate at the bottom? I don't know what that symbol is like. It looks like a Tesla coil to me. I don't know if the embroidery was exactly like that. I don't know, but the colors are true and right. But how many pillars are in there? Can you count? There is 1, 2, 3, 4 pillars. How wide are they from each other? How far are they from each other? You know? That is the length of 20 cubits. So there's 5 spaces. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 spaces. So about 4L. So in any case, it was 5 cubits high. It was 20 cubits wide. That's what it is. Do you think it's easy to bring an animal in there? You can take your ox in there. You can take your scarpies in there. It's easy. Entrance is easy into the gate. That's not the door. That's the gate. This one here is the gate to the tabernacle. But then you find another veil with the same dimensions. The same dimensions. The gate is up top there because it's 10 high and 10 wide. So let's do maths. What's the gate, the area of this gate? 20 by 5 is 100 square cubits. 10 by 10 in the door to the tabernacle is 100. But it looks different. Because coming in here, we are invited as a salvation, a new believer, someone that brings, that offers, that washes ourselves in the laver, to prepare ourselves. And as we grow into maturity, we discover the full reality of who Messiah is. Messiah is lofty. Our Father is high and lifted up. The way is narrow, because between that 5 pillars at the top there, it's a narrow way. You can't take an animal in there. You can hardly fit through there. So, the same Messiah that brings us in is the one that sanctifies us and brings us closer and closer. And it becomes more difficult. And that's only the entry. That's only the way to get in. And I think if we look at the realities of this, the Father is bringing us, as He is bringing us closer and closer, there is an expectation from His side. The Father has got an expectation of our relationship with Him. So, first, before we go into the holy place, we discover Exodus 29:42. Let's just read it. It says, and this is for the children of Israel. Remember, this is for Israel. It says, a continual burnt offering for your generations. And Christian spoke about the continual burnt offering, the Korban Tamid. It's in the mornings and it's in the evenings, a continual burnt offering. For your generations at the door of the tent of meeting before Adonai, where I shall meet with you, to speak with you. Where is that? Where does the Father meet with us and speak with us? Over here. There, the burnt offering is there. The burnt offering is made there. He says, where I shall meet with you and speak with you, and there I shall meet with the children of Israel, and it shall be set apart by my glory, by my esteem. So where does the Father, if you're a normal Israelite, you're not a Levitical priest, where does the Father meet you? At the horns of the altar, outside, at the bronze altar, because you never ever go into the holy place. Not even thinking about mentioning the most holy place. If we go into 2-3 weeks down the line from here, we will find Leviticus 1-6 speaks about Israel bringing gifts, bringing offerings to our Father. And it is, the divisions are what is compulsory and what's voluntary, the 5 different gifts. If we think about the next portion in Leviticus 6, it's 1-5, and 6-9 is about how the priests deal with these gifts. And then it becomes not what is compulsory and voluntary. The distinguishing factor becomes what is holy and what is most holy. What is holy of holies. And the holy of holies for Israel, the children of Israel, is at the bronze altar. The holy of holies for the Levitical priest is in the holy of holies. So, we'll deal with it as we go next week, or the week after that. But there is an altar outside, and it's interesting, and we've got a black wall today. If we think about what that word sabach means, it comes from, it's the altar, and excuse my writing, but it looks something like this. It is Zayin Bet Chet. And actually, altar is a mizbeach, and it's something like this. So, and it speaks about, there is a symbolic understanding to those characters. And if we think about the Zayin, then the Zayin here is, the word for altar comes from the Hebrew word zavach. And let's just look at what the symbolic meaning is. The word Zayin means, what does it mean? Do you know? It means a weapon. But it's interesting. It means weapon, taking up a weapon. Because a sword really in Hebrew is cherev. No? Is that right, Marike? I think the word for sword in Hebrew is cherev. But a weapon, taking up a weapon, is the word zayin. But you know what the character, the symbolic character or the pictographic character for a weapon is? It looks like this. What sort of a sword is that? It's a plowshare. Because zayin also means provision and food and sustenance. So what do you think about that scripture that says that Isaiah 2 verse 4. He will judge between the nations, and they will beat their weapons, their swords, into plowshares. When He's coming. So the weapons that we have at the moment will be made for the provision of swords. The reason why we have swords at the moment is because of unrighteousness and sin and brokenness and death and all of those things. So we are heading into a time in the future where our swords will look something like this. It becomes something that provides life. And your life here looks like a house, a tent from the top, and the chet is a wall. So it is the house of your life. The bed is the house of your life. That's what is in here. But then you must make, what is the character if I say chet? What do you think? What is the word that springs to mind? What do you think? Chai, life. There's another one though, as prominent. What about chet? Sin. So what a father does is, by the way, that word is the 7th character in the Hebrew alphabet. Will you give me a second and I'll just explain it to you? It is this. It's not that. It's this. It's an aleph, it's a bet, and a gimel, and a dalet. This is planning, isn't it? This is a beautiful idea of planning. All right. Dalet, I'll write at the bottom, then you'll know. Dalet, what's coming? Aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, vav. Vav, hey, zain. Okay. All right. Aleph, bet, gimel, dalet, hey, vav, zain. Thank you. All right, like that. Need to brush up on these things a little bit, it seems. So, it starts out with our Father, the strong one, that presents the kingdom to us. Where does He present it to us? In our house, the house of our lives. He brings the message of the kingdom to our lives. Through whom does He bring it? Through the Son, the Gamal, the one that brings the good news of the kingdom, the camel, the one that bears the good news of the kingdom. Where does it bring it to? To the door of your heart. That's where it brings it. He brings the good news, the gospel of the kingdom to the door of your heart, so that you will experience His goodness and every good thing that He brings on the back of the camel, so that you will have hay. Hay is a revelation. It is the revelation of the goodness of who our Father is. So because of the good news that He brings to you, you'll have the revelation of the Vav, the perfect man, the one that joined us with our Father, the one that if you look at the Aleph is an interesting thing, and I'm way off track here, but don't worry. The Aleph is actually a Vav, a slanted Vav with 2 arms. Because it is the man, it is the one that our Father sent, Yeshua, that's bowed down, that reaches up to our Father and reaches down to man and reconciles them in a relationship. So if that is the message that is coming to our lives through Messiah, to the door of our hearts, and we receive that revelation through the Son of God, the Son of Man, then we will receive the sword of the Spirit, the Zayin, the weapon of His Spirit. And it is the message of the kingdom. It's a message of the gospel in the first characters of the Hebrew alphabet. So they do have meaning. So if you look at this word Savach, it says the sword of His Spirit, the weapon that's been given to us, the word of the Father that's coming to your life and my life. What do we do with it? We enter into a relationship with Him through the red heifer, and then we enter into the tabernacle. We get the right to enter into the tabernacle so that we can be sanctified, so that the sin, the chet, the sin in our lives can be dealt with, and that it leads to chai. It leads to the life that the Father has installed for us. And it helps us to grow and mature in the image and what the Father has for us. So initially, we know that Israel brought their best, their very best. This morning when we read, it was interesting. It says, when the nation came to Aaron and said, make us a calf. He says, okay, he says to the people. Now, this is not gender specific. He says to the people, go and take the oorkravels, what is it, earrings, from the ears of your daughters and your children. So who's the people here? Anyways, And what did they do? They tore it from their daughters or their wives and their families' ears. Was it a voluntary gift that the family brought? Doesn't sound so. But when Israel brought their gift to the Father, they brought it with willing hearts to overflow. So, different in attitude. So, what are the gifts that we are bringing to the Father on a continual basis as we approach Him, as we are coming closer to Him? We'll read about this in Leviticus. I don't want to dwell with it. But there are 5 offerings that we are bringing. And in Leviticus 1 to 5, as I said, they are distinguished between voluntary and what's die teenoorgestelde? Compulsory, thank you. Compulsory offerings, that's what it is. And when the Levitical priests are looking at it from their perspective to present it before the Father, it is the distinguishing factor is what is holy and what is most holy. So, these are the gifts that they bring, but what does Israel get in return? Because it's their expectation that we're talking about. What do they get in return? When I bring a lammiekie to the altar to be slaughtered, what do I get in return? Do I get His protection? Do I get health? Do I get wealth? Do I get provision, water and manna? Is that the things that I get? As a benefit, yes, I do get them. But that cannot be the reason why I bring it. Because if that is the reason why I bring it, it is for my own purpose. But I take those gifts to the altar because I realize who the Father is. And I see His awesome might and who He is. And out of appreciation and love, I want to do His will and walk in His ways. And that's why I bring it. And what do I get in return? I get His love response, His goodness and His mercy and His acceptance as for me to be part of His family. That's what I get in return. So, and you get peace. That's where we're going to. It's into the experience of joy and peace and all of the good things that we do experience. So, when did Israel start to bring things that were not their best? Second grade stuff. When did they start to do that? And why did they do that? This is the time where we sort of interact, by the way. Well, what do you think? Why would they not bring their very best? I think there are a couple of reasons. The first reason, we spoke about it this morning when we, before the time, prayed together, is Moses had an interesting experience with the Father, the burning bush experience. Remember? And from there on forward, he was totally committed. It's a life of commitment and love and obedience and joy as he went along. Sometimes the joy was a little bit diminished, but he lived a life dedicated to our Father. So what about Joshua? Did Joshua have a similar experience? Remember when James wrote about this, when he spoke about it in this little portion in Pearls of Jehovah Tsevaot. Remember when he went out from the camp to Jericho and he went to inspect to see what they're heading into, and he met a man with a sword, with a drawn sword. And he said, what did he say to him? He says, are you for us or are you against us? Is that a legitimate question? I think it is. But what was the answer? No. No what? The answer was no. I am the captain of the host. Are you with me? And that's a totally different story. So the perspective changes. It is Joshua walking in the obedience and in relationship and in submission to our Father? That is the deciding factor. So as I was thinking about expectations, it's just normal that what is our Father's expectation when we enter, when we take the ashes of the red heifer upon us? We identify with the death and the life of Messiah. And that we enter, to take the tabernacle, the Ark of the Covenant, and put it in our hearts, in our lives. And He starts to build our tabernacles from within. So what is His expectation when we start out that relationship? What do you think? What is our Father's expectation from us? Obedience. Covenantal relationship. It is to leave the things of brokenness and death behind. If you enter into my presence, what do? Do you bring the things of brokenness of the world to me as part of who you are? We should leave those things at the door. That is the purpose of the red heifer's ashes. As we are washed, those things remain behind. We are cleansed from that death. So, I think if we look at Ephesians 2:8-9, it speaks about that we are being saved, that we are saved through faith in Messiah, not of our own works that we should boast. Remember? So it is the salvation experience is what our Father has done for us. But as we think about, we've been saved. Do you agree? We have been saved. If you haven't had a relationship, or we haven't had a time we experienced the salvation of our Father and come to the knowledge of who Messiah is and that He is your Savior and you submit your life to Him, come to me afterwards and come speak to me. We'll pray for you. All right, so that's the first thing. Our spirits have been regenerated. We are now spiritually alive. We have been made alive in Messiah. But Philippians says we are being saved. How are we being saved? How do we do it? Think of the tabernacle. We are entering through the door of the tabernacle. And here is the privilege and the potential to bring of your own, of yourself, to put on the altar, to go into the wash basin and to clean yourself of the things that are contaminating you in your everyday walk. And as you grow in closeness in relationship with your Father, as priests of the kingdom, as 1 Peter says we are, then we can go into the holy place and stand at the menorah and intercede for the tribes that are the 12 loaves of His presence and come before the altar of incense. We can have that experience. But our Father has expectation. And His expectation is covenantal relationship because He gave His Son for us to live. And as His Son has died and rose again and sat at the right hand of the Father, we will have the same experience because that is our hope, is that we will be resurrected with Messiah, isn't it? So, and when we are resurrected, it says that we will be saved. We have been saved, we are being saved, and we will be saved. And that's our hope. So, is that our expectation? Is that why we do this? This is why our whole focus of our lives is to make sure we get into to have a good standing with the Father when we die. Because you know what? There was part of Israel that pursued this in time gone past, apart from relationship with our Father. And they turned to Molech. You know that? Because that was the reason you would take a newborn baby and offer it to an idol. So that you take an innocent being, closest family member of yourself, and send it into the afterlife so that that young person can make voorspraak, what's this now? To intercede on your behalf at the king of the underworld. That's why they offered to Molech. But that is a relationship apart from our Father. If we focus on Him and we worship Him and we believe in the Son that He has died and is resurrected and He's interceding for us as Moses and Aaron did, we can do our very best while we are here to worship Him in spirit and in truth, to glorify His name and to build the kingdom in our midst. So, what happens is a life of sanctification when we enter that door. That's what's important. Is the old creation, the old things, the brokenness, the things that we've experienced in the past, the things we speak about, the campfires, you know, that story is my life in the army, you know, those days of suffering, tribulation. That can easily become part of our character. It can be who we are at in the world. Those are the things that we leave at the gate because we are now a citizen of the kingdom. And if we live anything else than a citizen of the kingdom here, we have not fully entered. There's work to be done. So, speaking of those days, why would a sinner that enjoys life, they enjoy the life of wine, woman and song, whatever, why would that person join this life, the life of worshipping our Father, laying down everything that he enjoys in this life right now. You know? Because apparently those things stay behind. They stay outside. Why would you make a decision to do that and enter a life of the kingdom? Enter a life of becoming a citizen of the kingdom, an ambassador. What is the motivation? Why would you do it? I can't hear. You had an encounter with the king, most probably. Because neither Moses or Joshua or Gideon, who we spoke about as well, was ever the same again. They had a complete different life experience and value system from there on forward. So if we are really battling to lay down the things that are part of the world, and we're walking in brokenness, and you have things that you are not, that doesn't belong in the kingdom, that you can't get rid of, maybe we should ask Messiah that portion of your life must be taken under his salvation blood. Maybe you have not fully crossed over the Jordan into the promised land yet. You know? So we can only decide to lay down those things that belong in the world if we have an encounter with the King. That's the only possible reason. So I was thinking, what do we believe in? Do we believe in the kingdom? Or are we in the kingdom? Because remember, the word says that even the demons believe in our Father. They believe he exists. They believe he is there, he's great, he's mighty. Remember what they said when they encountered Messiah? You are the Son of the living Elohim. And Messiah said, keep quiet. I don't need any testimony from you. I need a testimony from the people that believes in me. So we can believe in the kingdom, and we can believe in the Father. We can believe in Messiah, that he exists, that he died, that everything happened. But it's not the same picture as being in the kingdom, in a relationship with him. That's not the same thing. So, and this is probably one of the most difficult texts in the Word for me. And it says, because you need to look at yourself when we read this. It's a very familiar text. It says, "Not everyone who keeps saying to me, 'Master, Master, will get into the kingdom from heaven?' But only..." Where am I now? There I am. "Not everyone who keeps saying to me, 'Master, Master,' will get into the kingdom from heaven, but only the person that keeps doing the will of my Father. Many will say to me on that day, 'We have prophesied in your name.'" Are these guys, if you read through this, is it people that has got the perception, the idea, the idea that they're part of the kingdom? You think? Prophesied in your name, drove demons out in your name, performed miracles in your name. And Messiah said, "I didn't know you." So we're happy, by the way, because you know what? It focuses on the word iniquity. And iniquity is, we translate that into being anti-Torah. So we are keeping the festivals, we are eating the way the Bible prescribes, we are keeping Shabbat, we are doing all of the beautiful things that it says. You know? So it's definitely not us. Do you agree? You know? Can't be. If you encounter someone from another fellowship, from a Christian fellowship, and the discussion gets a little bit heated, this is the text that we go to. You know, you can say, "You prophesy and you do all of these wonderful things in my name. Go away from me, I don't know you." Why? Because you don't keep the Torah. It's a motivation to keep the Torah. No? That's not completely the story. It's not actually the story. Because the word iniquity there means more than just sticking to the guidelines of the Torah. So, think about Matthew 5. Matthew 5, the portion that says, "Do not hide. A city of light a light on a hill is not hidden by a basket." You remember that story? So, what would hide the light? What represents the light? Let's just think about this. A light that's on a hill, what does it represent? A beacon in the darkness, in the wilderness, in a hostile country. You walk around in the darkness and there's rocks and there's all sorts of In our days it says spiders, but in the days of the real men it was lions and tigers and those things. And so, if there are threats in the country and you see a light on a hill, what does it represent? Salvation. It represents hope. It represents chesed, grace. It is where you need to go. So if you want to be saved, that's the place that you head for. So, the works, the ways of Torah includes that. And I'm not diminishing it. But that's not the only thing that's important. Letting your light shine to the people around us, to show the Father's mercy, to show His kindness, His goodness, His grace. All of those values of the Father. Think about Exodus 34, where He presents Himself and He says, I am the one that's full of mercy and grace, slow to anger, rich in love and in truth, forgiving thousands. You know? So, how can we hide the light that the Father has invested in you? How do we hide that light? What is the best way to do it? You start focusing on yourself and of your experience and what is good for you. Self-love, igev, is the moment that you start to be judgmental towards other people. The moment your presence in a conversation leads other people to remain quiet because they know you of a person that always knows the truth and they don't know anything, so they rather keep quiet. If it leads them away and diminishes their experience with the Father, then you're putting a basket over your own light that shines. Because we are not pointing towards us, we are pointing to the Father. So if the things that we are strong in, if our character of our presence of maybe being a very intelligent, very knowledgeable person puts other people down and make them feel like a second-class citizen, we must be careful, because those things are not part of the values and the things that the Father wants to do in His kingdom. And we in the Hebrew root community, we are very prone to do that. You know, unfortunately, that we are. So, the problem is not the Torah. The problem is not only walking a life outside of the Torah. The problem is not displaying the Father's heart. We can grow in the obedience of the Torah. The Father invites us to become part and to grow in the works and in the ways of Torah. But we are tasked in this world to show the love of the Father. And as you enter into the tabernacle, you are becoming sanctified and you live a life of obedience. That's how we live a life of loving Him. Because He is not like a human being, we know that. It's difficult for me to express my love to the Father. How do you live a life of loving Messiah? I was once in a prophetic conference many moons ago, late 90s. And they had a suggestion. They say, stand on your tippy toes and try to kiss the sun. Didn't really work for me. The way that we show our love and our appreciation for what He has done, for including us into the kingdom, is by being obedient to His word and His will, and trying to be transformed into the character of Messiah. You agree? He's the living Torah. So, but if we take those same words that's bringing life to us and we turn them around and we make it words of judgment towards others, it's no more words of life. It's words of judgment and death. So we must be careful of that. I think that's one of our biggest issues. So, and we do dwell in those ways most often because we didn't put the old man down at the gate, and we still want to show ourselves to be strong, you know, and right, and knowledgeable, and intelligent. So, I think that is one of the bigger risks in our lives. And remember, what we are doing here is we're making a decision of walking towards the ark of His presence or walking towards something that you have raised in your life. Here it's called the golden calf. So if we are not putting the old man down at the door of the kingdom, then his ability to shine his light through you is severely limited in your life. So Think of this young man. This young man in Mark 10 is probably one of the saddest stories in the apostolic scriptures. Because it's the wealthy young man, and as we read through it, let's just discuss it. And let's discuss it. It says, and Yeshua was setting out on his way, and one came running. Now think about this. It's a wealthy young ruler, a man of status. It's unbecoming of a man of status to run. You send people to run for you. You don't run by yourself. So, what did he do? One came running and knelt before him and asked him, "Good teacher, what shall I do to inherit everlasting life?" So, what do we get from there? It is firstly, he was humble. He knelt before Yeshua. He came running, not regarding himself as someone of importance, And he says, "Good teacher." Now think about Yeshua. The rabbis, all rabbis, especially of those days, wanted to be recognized as being a good rabbi, as a rabbi of prominence, so that his flock can grow and so that people will come to him. Being a prominent rabbi of the time. So what did Messiah say? He said to him, "Why do you call me good? No one is good except the Father." So he immediately deflects from this young man that tries to bring honor to Messiah. He says to him, "No one is good except for the Father." So, you know the commands: do not commit adultery, do not murder, do not steal, do not bear false witness, do not rob, and respect your father and mother, which is the last half of the 10 words. And what was his reply? He says, "Teacher, all these I have watched over from my youth. I'm walking in Torah to the best of my ability." Did this young man think that the Torah can bring him salvation, give him eternal inheritance? No, he didn't, because he came running to Messiah and he said to him, "What shall I do to inherit eternal life?" He knew that Torah didn't bring eternal life, but only belief and trust and faith in the Master. So, in our Father, So, and Yeshua, looking at him, loved him. Isn't that amazing? On his confession that he says, "I'm living a life of obedience before the Father," he says, Yeshua looked at him and he loved him and he said to him, "There's only one thing. You know what? You're in a very good place. There's only one little thing that you need to do. Sell all you possess and give to the poor, and you shall have treasure in heaven. And come follow me in taking up your cross." It's a very easy thing to do. So, what is the story about? Is it about wealth and people that are wealthy can't inherit the kingdom? Is that what it says? Definitely not. As we go on, you will see that Messiah qualifies and he quantifies this. So, it says, Messiah says in Mark 10:20 that the rich man obeyed everything since his youth. He loved his neighbors and he loved him. Because it supports John 14:21, where it says, John 14:21 says, "The person who has my commandments and keeps them is the one who loves me." So how do we show our love and appreciation to the Father, to Yeshua? The one who loves me is the one who keeps my commandments. We do that for the purpose of showing our love and appreciation to the Father. 1 John says it over and over. He repeats the same thing. John was very strong on the way that we show our love to our Father is by living a life of obedience before Him. The one who loves me will be loved by my Father, and I too will love him and reveal myself to him. So, being loved by the Father is a very good thing. By being loved by Messiah is what we are aiming for. Hebrews 12 says, if you're a son, you'll be disciplined, you'll be chastised. It's good. If you're not, it's bad news, because then you're illegitimate. You're not a son. So this is part of the discipline that Messiah is speaking over this young man whom he loves. You agree? What does he do? So what he does, He's sad at this word, and he went away grieved, for he had many possessions. So he turns around and walks away. So he chooses his status and his position in life. He's a young ruler. He chooses what his identity is above being included in the kingdom. That's what he's doing. Yeshua, looking around, said to his disciples, "How hard is it?" And this is what he says. "How hard is it for those who have riches to enter in the reign of Elohim?" And the disciples were astonished at his words, and they responded to him and said, "Children, how hard is it for those who trust in riches to enter into the reign of the kingdom?" So, is it a problem to have wealth and to have belongings and so forth? It's not a problem. Is it a problem to trust in those belongings for your life, for your livelihood, and to bring it around yourself and accumulate, and this is why the Hebrews say you've got an evil eye if you're only living for your own life and purposes and not looking out for your neighbor. That's when this becomes a problem. It's when your status and your position, your intellect, your wealth, your everything becomes something that you raise above the values of the kingdom. That's when it becomes a problem. So, and through this, Messiah says it's going to be very, very difficult for him to enter into the reign of the kingdom. And they say, the disciples say, they are astonished, and they say, "Who then is able to be saved? If the rich, the wealthy among us that's living a life of Torah, living a life in his presence cannot be saved, who will be saved?" And we know it's impossible with men, but not with our Father. With our Father, everything is possible. So, on that point, I want you to stand. Quickly, just stand. Because I can see that it's getting long and the fans are not doing its thing. And do you know who's sitting behind you? Do you know? Just say hello to the person that's behind you. And seeing that we've done that, we are focusing, you can say thank you, focus on the relationship and focus on who's important around you, because for our Father everything is possible. So what did Peter say? He says, now he's thinking about himself, taking a bit of stock. He says, you know what? Seeing that he didn't want to leave his possessions, his place of authority and whatnot, we know that now he's a problem in the kingdom. He's not entering the kingdom. But what about us? We've left everything and followed you. Everything. So we must, okay, thank you for that one. We must be in the kingdom. So Messiah says, truly I say to you, no one, and this is a verse that caused the most harm that I know of in Scripture, because households and families have been broken up because of this verse. There's no one who has left his house or brothers or sisters or father or mother or wife or children or lands for the sake of me and the good news, who shall not receive 100-fold now in this time. So if you don't agree with me, I'm going to leave you. No? And I think this is a wrong interpretation. It is, who do we trust in for walking a life? Whose values do we have trust in, and whose values do we uphold? It's not the values of my father, my wife, my children, my brothers, my sisters. It is the family that I belong to, and the family that I walk with, and the family that is leading towards the Holy of Holies are these people. You know, that's what Messiah said. But it doesn't say that if your wife doesn't agree with you on a doctrine, it's good to go. You know, that's not what it says. It's not what it implies. It says, there's another portion of the good news there. It says, who shall not receive 100-fold now in this time, houses and brothers and sisters and mothers and children and lands with persecution, and in the age to come everlasting life. So, Kefa, on answer to your question, we have done it all. We've left everything, so we must be good. Messiah says it's a good place to be, but remember it comes with persecution. So if you think life, if we are living a life completely for the purposes of the Father, persecutions are going to come. So, if we want to be ambassadors of the kingdom, then we must know that what we feel a very strong part of our persona, of who we are at. Who we are in our job and in our position, who we are in intellectually, and whatever the case might be. Those things are of zero importance in the kingdom. Because if we are building a little bit of a kingdom around that aspect of our lives, then we are building our own kingdom. We are kings in our own kingdom. Remember that story of Egev, self-love? It's an invitation that Messiah says, if we are willing to give ourselves up, and if we experience salvation outside at the heifer, who is a gift from the Father, and now we are ready to start working at sanctification and getting our lives sorted out, we are laying down the old life, and it might be centered around brokenness. Remember, if there was something major happened in your life 30 years ago, you can develop a character and a crutch with, as far as that is concerned. Your whole life is centered around that thing. It becomes an idol too. Put that thing down at the gate of the kingdom and take up your new kingdom identity. And it's an identity that is found in Messiah and living a life in His presence. And it's refined and defined by kingdom principles. And as we participate and have action in this life, it shows the glory of the Father. Because remember, Israel was not saved for their purposes, for them alone. He says, Israel, remember, it's not for you that I'm saving you. It is for the glory of my name. So, sometimes in our pursuit of the King, our focus and our eyes on trying to do the correct thing turns inward to ourselves. And we lose focus on the reason why we're doing it. So, I think it's important for us. In Galatians 2:20 it says, I no longer live, but Messiah lives in me, and the life that I'm living now in this body, I live by the faithfulness of the Son of Elohim. So, remember when we said we are laying down our own selfish nature and picking up the life and the strength of Messiah? This is live by the faithfulness of the Son of Elohim. And that's our challenge. So, we have a challenge at the door. Remember Zayin? What is that thing created for? The word of the Father comes into our life, into our hearts, into our life, and you've got a choice. You either make a right turn to the throne of Elohim, into the Ark of the Covenant, or you make a left turn into upholding yourself as the king of your own kingdom. So, if there is something in our lives I think each one of us has a little bit of awareness of having maybe a short fuse, maybe, someone says something and you quickly explode. Maybe that's something that doesn't really exist in the kingdom as it should. Or maybe you are very concerned about your neighbor, and being very concerned, you tend to speak about your neighbor with other people quite a bit. That's not very welcome in the kingdom either. It's called gossip. And there's many of these traits, things that we can quantify and say or justify that doesn't belong. And if we focus and we become known for a person that is a gossiper or a slanderer or that's short-tempered or whatever the case might be, then that's a little bit of a golden calf that you're creating in your own life. Because the character of the kingdom is not firmly established in your life. And we are called to live a life of the kingdom, not to live a life that's known by our own values. So this story of Tisa is where the Father shows Himself to Moses. When Moses says, Father, show me your glory. And he says, you cannot see my face and live, but I'm going to show you my hindermost part, my acharei, that comes behind. And it can be interpreted not seeing the back of the Father, his sandals as He's walking away. We're seeing the achar, the times of glory that will come. Because that's what it means. It shows the hindermost parts of time. And when Moses saw the glory that the Father showed him, he bowed down and he worshipped our Father. Because our Father said, I am Yahweh, Yahweh Al-Rahum. I am the one that shows mercy and loving kindness, and I'm slow to anger, rich in love and in truth, and forgiving thousands. That same character quality is still in the Father today, and it's an invitation to us that if we live a life that there are some aspects of our lives that hasn't made the crossing over into the promised land yet, into the kingdom yet, He's inviting us to bring that aspect of your life so that we can make that crossover, that we can be a true citizen of the kingdom, and there's not a portion of your life that is hidden, the light that shines from your life, that's hidden by a basket. So it's an invitation to be a city on a hill that's got a shining light to our neighborhood, to the people around you, to draw them to the glory of the Father. Amen. I think what we're going to do today, Natalie, where are you? Nats, come just play that last song for us. We don't need to sing, just let's listen to the music. And if there is something in your life, if there is something that the Father has convicted you of while you were sitting here, let me tell you what it feels like. When someone speaks about a little thing of identify certain things, and you think, oh, maybe that's something. Respond to that thought, and just ask the Father for forgiveness and help Him to deal with these things. Because the problem with things that are so familiar in our lives, things of anger and of all of those things, it becomes so inherently part of your life that it's not in your hands that you can put it down. It can only be the Father that takes it from your life. But you must be willing to give it. That's what it is. So I want you to stand. Let's just stand. And while Nats are playing the song, I just think let's just spend this 5 minutes in His presence, and ask Him for forgiveness in the things that we might be missing it, and ask Him to heal us. And if anyone wants to come forward for prayer here, maybe Christo can join me then, and we can pray for you.